I don't think many adult children have actually come out and spoken out about how they figured it out.
In a world where pathological parents can destroy their child's loving relationship with their other parent, survivors must fight to uncover the sinister lies behind this mind-bending form of abuse.
Hi, welcome to the Parental Alienation Project, where I discuss all things parental alienation from the point of view of an adult child who's in the process of recovery and rebuilding my relationship with my dad. I'm Maddie, and today we're going to be talking about some of your most commonly asked questions. Without a doubt, the most commonly asked question that I've gotten from alienated parents is, what made you realize you were alienated? I've gotten this question over a dozen times now, and this is an amazing question. I can understand why so many parents are curious, because as an alienated parent, I can only imagine the pain and frustration you might be experiencing not knowing what your child is being told, not knowing what your child is being made to believe. I can only speak for myself and my experience, and in this video I'm going to share with you how I did realize that I had been going through parental alienation for 20 years. I'll give you the short answer and then I'll give you the long answer. The short answer to this question has a few aspects, I think. Number one, I had kids of my own. So I have two little toddlers right now, best part of my life. And becoming a mom myself, I had to learn what I wanted that to look like, how to treat my kids, what I wanted to tell them, how I wanted to treat them. And I started to question the way my mom had treated me, because before that, I always believed I deserved anything that was coming my way. So it was having kids, number one, gave me a new perspective on life and what parenthood ought to be. Number two, I started to find cracks in her fabric of reality. I started to confront her about certain events that caused long-term damage to my self-esteem, such as spiritual abuse, and specific events that I had never confronted her about before, that these events just happened and then life continued. Her response was very unnerving. I just wanted an apology, and instead I got fury. And it was turned around on me, and I was blamed for what her and a priest did to me. I was blamed. It was my fault, and I deserved it, she said. And you would do the same thing to your daughter. So there was no apology. And then a month later, she called me and said that she had talked to the priest, and actually it didn't happen at all. So she just backspaced my trauma, I guess.
Okay. That's neat.
So I started to uncover secrets. I started to uncover lies. Things just got crazy. Once there's a little crack in the false realities that she created, and I started to question a lot. That confrontation about what she did with me and a priest, that really got the ball rolling. I'm a person who needs to know the truth. I won't stop until I know the truth. It's almost like I became a little detective trying to figure out my own life.
Hello, I'm Nancy Drew.
Around that same time, I started to ask her questions about my childhood. I've always known from her that there was, even when it was happening, that there was a restraining order against my dad at some point. And then I always knew that there was a domestic violence charge filed against my dad, which she later dropped. I won't go into that. These two events with the legal system had always been really frustrating to me, because I'm the oldest kid in my family, 5 children, and the only girl, so I have 4 younger brothers. And the restraining order, the domestic violence claims, all of these claims that helped fuel my decision that I made to not be involved with my dad. She never told my brothers any of that. They were, in fact, she protected them from knowing any of that. So that Christmas, 2 Christmases ago, I kind of just lost it. I had had enough, and I called a forced family meeting. I needed a family meeting because I was about to make sure that my brothers knew this information. In my head at the time, it was not my goal to call my mom out. That was not the purpose of the meeting. It's been a struggle for me my whole life, seeing my brothers have healthy and happy and close relationships with my dad. So I would always say things like, you know, how can you be so close with dad when he was ABUSIVE towards mom? And I thought that maybe I could get some answers if I told my brothers the truth of what happened. So I called this forced family meeting and just told everybody. I don't know what I expected from my mom at that moment, but I surely didn't expect for her to deny it. So she said, "No, that never happened, Madison. Madison, that's crazy. What are you talking about?" I remember that my stomach dropped. I felt sick. I felt so confused and like off balance. Later that night, went upstairs and I showed it to her. I said, "Mom, look at this. You wrote in your own handwriting there was a domestic violence charge. There was a restraining order." And she said, "Oh yeah, I know. I don't want the boys to know, so."
Oh my God, what is happening?
I said, "So you lied about it in front of me? In front of them? You lied about it?" Yeah. That still wasn't enough, though, to get me to really put two and two together, unfortunately. I do remember a big watershed moment for me was the day that I wrote out everything my dad has done to hurt me. It was about a page. Not one of them was anything severe. Everything that I wrote down was forgivable, completely forgivable. That was a big, WTF moment for me. I was unable to realize how I had made this decision then. At such a young age, I made a decision that would impact me for 20 years. Because I never questioned my decision. Yeah, I wrote that out, a page and a half for my dad, and then I wrote one for my mom. I couldn't stop writing. There were 13 pages and I was still going. And I think I stopped at 14 because I just couldn't continue. And a lot of those things that I wrote down were much more severe than anything I wrote down with my dad. So here I am, 28 years old, looking at these lists and wondering, how the hell did I get here?
It's going down!
It's as if I wrote the evidence down for both of my parents, and I had gotten things backwards. I felt stupid, I felt fooled, I felt confused as hell. I was really, really frustrated because I couldn't remember making that decision when I was 9 years old. I couldn't remember why I made that decision. I couldn't remember the evidence or the facts that caused me to make that decision. And I called, well, first of all, I called my dad. I asked him a lot of things. He confirmed a lot of things for me. And still at that time, I didn't want to believe it.
It was too much for him. He's retired from reality.
I was in denial. And at this point in my life, I was having panic attacks throughout the day. I didn't want to bring anyone else down with all this dark, heavy stuff I was going through. I didn't want to affect my brother's relationship with my mom. But after that, I called my dad's mom, and she was able to confirm everything for me. None of these people in my life knew the term parental alienation, not even my dad, but they all knew what had been going on for the past 20 years. That my mom was turning me against my dad, using me to hurt him, trying to just have me all to herself, to control me. Talking to my grandma, my dad's mom. That was a big watershed moment because I trust her implicitly and I know she wouldn't lie. So she told me the truth and confirmed everything for me. And then I talked to my aunt that I haven't been allowed to talk to in 15 years, my godmother, because my mom claims she's a narcissist too. And so is the whole family. But I reconnected with her and it's been so great. I think for both of us. I spoke to everyone in the family I could. I had nothing left to lose at that point. I just needed information, and it wasn't gonna come from my mom. So I had to get to work trying to be a detective to figure out what had happened to me. I even asked all of them, if you knew what was going on, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you try to stop it? They all had the same response, which was, I was too scared that your mom would take you away from us completely. So ultimately I learned that people were scared of her. That's why. Discovering parental alienation forces you to not only admit that you've been living in someone else's version of reality, which is a false reality for what might be a period of months, years, or even decades. But you also have to come to terms with all of the damage that you've done, proxy of your pathological parent. Well, you have to cope with the fact that you have intimately and continuously hurt your parent without true justification. And on top of that, you have to somehow come to terms with the fact that you've lost months, years, perhaps even decades that you could have enjoyed with your loving parent. I gathered all this evidence as my little detective self, and it all pointed to one thing, and that was parental alienation.
You seem to have it all figured out.
So I was in this really awful, confusing state of disbelief for a while. And I was struggling to accept the truth, even though deep down I knew it was true. I think it was so hard to accept the truth because it was such an intimate betrayal. Not once over the 20 years did I question whether or not my mom was right about her opinion of my dad. I just completely believed it from the start. I think because if that wasn't true, then, like if she wasn't right, then she lied to me. She hurt me for no reason at all. She used me as a pawn to hurt my dad. She neglected my own well-being, my own emotional state. The past 20 years, my mom has known that the biggest pain in my life is that my dad doesn't love me. And I always thought something was wrong with me because my own dad doesn't love me. Those beliefs I developed from that pain, I really have struggled. And it was even more if-thens. It was, if this is true, then there's something deeply disturbed and depraved about who I thought was a loving parent and who I trusted completely and who I counted on, who I loved. But there was one upside. If this is true, then maybe my dad does love me. I might have a shot with him. I hope that answers your question. I'm sorry it was such a long-winded answer, but that's truly how it happened for me. Once I started talking to other people, even my brothers and friends, the evidence became incontestable. I think something snapped or shifted inside of me, and I just knew that was true. But at the same time, at that stage of my life, I wasn't ready to believe that my dad loved me. That's something I had to learn to believe. That didn't come right away because these beliefs are so deep. It's so deep. Let's see if in conclusion, if I can give anyone a message of hope. Researchers had this doll, this blow-up doll, and they had a child and he was interacting with the blow-up doll, and then they brought the mom in, and the mom started like caressing the doll's cheek and speaking really softly and nicely to the doll. And in response, the kid started stroking the doll's cheek and being super sweet to the doll. Then they did another experiment where the mom and child were with the doll, and the mom started hitting and kicking the doll and screaming at the doll. And what do you know? In response, the child also started hitting and kicking the doll and screaming at the doll. Children imitate the parents that they trust. I think that experiment helps remind me that I stood no chance. I was a child. I still had baby teeth. I believed in Santa. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was making the right decision. I thought I was standing up to injustice. I really did. And it turns out it was the exact opposite. At some point, I think the child, once they gain some life experience and have a little bit more perspective, especially once they have kids, a crack will show in that pathological parent's false reality. All they need is one crack. One crack. And then the whole thing comes falling down like a house of cards. That would be my answer. They just have to find one lie, one secret, and then start digging and learn the truth. So, yeah, don't underestimate your kids. I found out that a lot of the children who are targeted in this sick form of child abuse are or pride themselves on being independent thinkers, and that's something I can relate to. So I definitely thought it was all my decisions, all my beliefs. But once I discovered that hole, the lie, the secrets, I am an independent thinker, so there wasn't anything stopping me from trying to find the truth. I was gonna try till I died. I needed to know. It's my own story, and I knew it wasn't gonna be pretty, but I never expected it to turn out this way. If your child is an independent thinker too, they will figure this out. They will. That brings us to the end of this episode. I hope that answering this question has been beneficial for some people. As always, thank you for watching and listening to the Anti-Alienation Project. Bye.